Here's your Chapter 2 study guide on scientific notation. For 1 and 2, we tell whether each number is written correctly or incorrectly in scientific notation, and if incorrectly written, we need to state the reason and correct the number. For the first one, I see that our coefficient is in between 1 and 10, so that's okay. We have a power of 10, and we have an exponent, so number 1 is correct. For the second one, I see that the coefficient is less than 1, but we do have a power of 10 and an exponent, so we would say incorrect. Our reason is the coefficient is less than 1, then we have to correct it. The correct coefficient would be 4.3. Write each number in scientific notation. Number 3 is a very small number, so keep in mind small numbers have negative exponents. We would need to move the decimal between the 6 and the 2 to create a coefficient of 6.2. Then we need a power of 10, and now let's count from the decimal to between 6 and 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 moves, so our exponent is -7. Number 4, we have a very large number, but we do the same process. We need to move our decimal between the 9 and the 1, so our front number is 9.1, then a power of 10, and now in a whole number our decimal is hidden in the back. So now we move from the back to between the 9 and 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 moves, so our exponent is 8. I would also put these in the calculator to be sure they get you back to the original value. When looking at negative exponents, to circle the greater one, the greater negative number would be the one closest to 0, closest to becoming a whole number. So this here would be our greatest number. If you wanted to put them in standard form to compare, that would be a good idea too. Here's how they would look if we put them in standard form. I know that looks a little crazy, but you can see same, 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 and 3 is greater than 0. So we're right. 3.9 times 10 to the -13th power is the greater number. Order the numbers from least to greatest, smallest to biggest. So you could either put 8700 into scientific notation since the other two are in scientific notation, or put everything in standard form. I'm going to put it in scientific notation. Now, 10 to the third, 10 to the third, and 10 to the fourth. I can see now my greatest number is right here, 3.98 times 10 to the fourth power. Now I look at 1.97 and 8.7, and the least would be 1.97. We could also write them all in standard form and take a look at them as well. And by listing them in standard form, you can see that 1,970 would be the smallest amount. So either way, this is the answer you should have gotten. When evaluating in scientific notation, you are allowed to use your calculator and put your calculator in scientific notation mode. To do this, you hit the second function and the DRG key to find science and set your calculator that way. Just be very careful that you do include the parentheses for each problem. So for this one, when I type in, I add these two values together, I get the following answer. I could also do this by hand by moving my decimal over 1 and changing this to the 5th power, and then carefully lining up my decimals and you keep the 10 to the 5th power. And this also gives us the same answer. 5.336 times 10 to the 5th. A third way would be to put everything in standard form, add them normally, and then put them back into scientific notation. For number 8, we're also evaluating, this time it is a subtraction problem. Again, you can use your calculator and put it into scientific notation mode. Be careful and make sure you're putting in the parentheses. Okay, or if you wanted to try by hand, you could move the decimal over and make this 10 to the 19th power. Just be sure that you accurately subtract. So I got 6.8898 times 10 to the 19th power. To the 19th power, this would be a little crazy to put into standard form, so I would definitely go with calculator mode, or if you want to try to carefully subtract your decimals. Okay, same goes for this one. We would just, again, make sure you're multiplying this problem and using the grouping symbols if you're going to use the calculator in scientific notation mode. Or you can do the product of powers. So 24, and then keep the base, add the exponents, times 10 to the 11th power. And then this has to be in proper scientific notation, so we have to go 1 over to make it 2.4 times 10. And we go 1 over, we add 1, so 10 to the 12th power should be the final answer. But again, the calculator is great in scientific notation mode. Okay, and the final one of this type is, you could do quotient of powers if you wanted. 24 divided by 6 would give you 4. And then the quotient of powers says when the bases are the same and we're dividing, keep the base and subtract the exponents. And once again, if you're using scientific notation mode in your calculator, you have to put in the grouping symbols. Just be very careful about how you type that in. Okay, and the last one would be your choice. How do you want to add these in using scientific notation? Do you want to put them into standard form and then get your answer and then put your answer back into scientific notation? That's acceptable. Or do you want to use the calculator and describe those steps, or do you want to move the decimal and keep it in scientific notation? I'll show you the ways to do this. So if you want to do standard form, you would just add it up in standard form and then put this answer back into scientific notation. And then you would describe the steps. So then you would write into words to describe how you did this. So I came up with this. I converted these into standard form and I added them together. When I got my answer, I put the value back into scientific notation by creating a number between 1 and 10 and counting the decimal places to determine the exponent for my base of 10. You do the same idea if you were going to use the calculator. You would describe the process in writing, or if you're going to slide that decimal over and keep it into scientific notation.